we're joined by special guest Ubershouts to talk all things casting and TCGs on this week's episode of The Winning Point.
But we've got a guest on who knows the show, and I feel like would be disappointed if they weren't part of the cold open.
I like the cold open. You guys, like you were saying, you were dropping it at one point, but then you like ninjutsu'd it back in one episode and you kept it going. I really do.
When I'm unblocked, I am coming into play, tapped and attacking. Okay.
No, I respect that, honestly. I think it takes a proper esporter to want to bring that cold open in. So I respect it. We all happen to be that. So.
We're all esporters in some way, shape, or form.
It takes a real dedication to not caring about ratings or what people audibly say about how much they hate the cold open. You really got to double down on that. And that's what we do here on The Winning Point, episode 23. We are here. I am Blevins. That is Casanova. That is Charmer. And we've got a brand new guest here today. Someone I've known I was thinking about it, Mitch. I've known you for like over 10 years at this point because the old Overwatch days. It is none other than Uber. What's up, buddy?
Yo, yeah, I mean, I am feeling old today. That really has reinforced the vibes. What's
right?
up? I'm so happy to be on the show. I think you guys are doing an awesome job. When I get into a thing, the first thing I do is look for like reputable voices on that thing to listen to. I couldn't find them, but I did find this podcast. So it was my starting point. And I've been very glad to be along for the ride. So I guess, yeah, long time listener, first time caller. What's up?
It's good to have you on. I mean, yeah, it is like the reputable voices in the scene, and then it's like, but also our podcast is Blevins, Charmer, and myself, and then, like Pastries here. It's like the like three dragons meme, except for we're all the silly one. It's, yeah, of course. So no, it's good to have you, and I guess like for anybody who doesn't know who Uber is, can you explain to our listeners like what you've done? I guess in TCGs would be where they might have already seen you, but then also for anybody who's like an esports fan, because this is a League of Legends card game, they might know you from some of the other work that you've done, because you've been prolific in the esports casting space.
I guess like the best way to like say how far I go back in TCGs is tell the story. I high rolled for first turn player the other day with a player at one of my Nexus nights, and I roll a nat 20, but the dice comes from one of the fat packs from Magic, and my opponent looks at me and he goes, "Is that Shadowmoor on your dice?" And I'm like, "Yeah, buddy. Yeah, it is." So I mean, yeah, since I guess like the mid 2000s, maybe mid to late 2000s, I've been into TCGs. Didn't always really have the opportunity to pursue them, and I don't know if I ever really like got myself into competitive scenes on that first foray into MTG. I think I played like an RPTQ, and that was about it. But sort of rediscovered that a couple years ago after being a casual TCG player, because I ran to a friend of mine, Tannen Grace, who I randomly was on a Magic podcast with. My interest in the game had been ignited, I think, from Arena's entry for a brief time, and then, like for many, it maybe petered out after that. But yeah, he got me into a Discord, a bunch of like top-level TCG players, and I was introduced to Flesh and Blood, which is a TCG I still play and I commentate. But outside of that, I've been a professional esports commentator for about 10 years now. Spent some time in Europe working for then ESL was the name of the company. They ran esports competitions, broadcasts, all that stuff. I was a commentator there and sort of got trained under a lot of the best of the day. And since 2017, I've been here in Los Angeles, California. I came out for the Overwatch League, and since then I've become a freelancer and just tried to continue working in esports. So far, not so shabby. I've managed to keep that up without having to go and get a normie job yet. So fingers crossed that remains to be the case.
Oh, that's great. That's what we love to. That's what we love to see every time is not having to get the normie job. Right. That's the dream in esports has always been to not have to do it. So it's always awesome to see you continuing to kill it.
Charmer just scowling right now.
No. First of all, yes, I hate having the normie job. I mean, I don't hate it. Jokes aside, I do love my day job, and I'm very happy with what I do. But I'm just very excited to have Uber on because this is somebody who it sounds like will actually get my Magic references. Mitch, they make fun of me all the time because all of my references are 25 years old. But as somebody who owns the roll down dice for all three sets of Kamigawa block, your Shadowmoor story touches me.
Yeah. And that was not long before I first started playing. But yeah, I remember because my first deck was mono white Kitsune Samurai only, baby. Bushido all the way to the fences. That's was my first foray into playing constructed. So yeah, I vibe with it.
So good. I'm not going to go in. We've talked a lot about how long we've all been playing Magic, except for Cass, who has not
never played Magic.
Yeah,
I draft sometimes, but that's about it.
I mean,
that is my experience.
Yeah. I was like a commander player for the most of recent history, and like I said, most of my competitive TCG activity is in Flesh and Blood because I think that's the only way to really interface with that particular game is that you are, you're sort of thrown into it. So a lot of my locals are like final boss every round kind of vibe. And I've had a tendency in that game to not play the best decks. I think, I identify very strongly with the hero in Flesh and Blood that has not been good for quite some time. So, I'm taking a different approach with Riftbound. Honestly, I've decided that I'm actually going to play something that is good. So when I lose, then I only have my play skill to blame and not having to play from a deficit every time I sort of shuffle up and draw. So that's how I've been approaching Riftbound, which I think it's been an interesting because it's like the game that I'm trying to be more competitively minded in, and it is the game I think that is also reaching a lot of non-TCG players or first-time TCG players or people that have a true love for the IP in the background and maybe are not geared in that way. So over the first year or so of, Riftbound being available out here in Los Angeles, I've seen sort of both sides of that spectrum at play. It's been I played 4 Nexus Nights, I think, and I played a release event. So I think I've seen, both ends of that particular spectrum at play out here. It's an interesting confluence of philosophy when it comes to card games.
I think this leans pretty heavily into kind of what I wanted to ask you about next with Riftbound, because you mentioned you want to be more competitive in Riftbound. You're playing Kaisa, right? You're playing the more competitive decks. What do you want to get out of Riftbound? Is this your game to just play and be a hobby? Is this something that you would love to jump in and sink your teeth into as a caster? Or is it no, I want to go to Houston and play and win and be a competitor this time around instead of being in front of the camera?
Yeah, I think such as my enjoyment of my job is that I don't have a huge separation from games I love and games I'd want to cast. I actually think that they're really similar because it's just a marriage of things that I love. So the first thing about TCGs is that casting them requires a really immense amount of domain knowledge. Perhaps a MOBA caster might also relate to this because in League of Legends, for example, which I casted for quite some time, you had everyone's ability names, all the items. You had to know what the items did, or at least you probably should to some degree. There were a lot of interactions. There's just a huge amount to know. And TCGs are really similar. When I got into casting Flesh and Blood, there was this immense amount of domain knowledge, and I came in midway through the game's life cycle as we now know it. So I had to go back and learn a bunch, and I had to get current first of all, and then I had to learn as the game went in order to put myself in a position to actually sort of cast it. And it took a fair bit of work there. I actually... Charmer will remember, I funded a Flesh and Blood tournament for the express purpose of casting some Flesh and Blood because there was not a lot of opportunities to do that. And at the time I was like, okay, I have some money to put up. I have connections with, honestly, fortunate to have connections with people in the scene that know a lot of these players. Their legitimacy is going to be something I leverage in order to bring them in and get this tournament going. So that was called the Goliath Gauntlet. We ran a couple of seasons of it. And I had some fab to cast and it worked out because I was then able to move on and take other opportunities. But in Riftbound, I just decided that, I think it was hand in hand with acquiring that domain knowledge, to potentially cast it one day because I think that would just be awesome fun. I don't know if it's something that is essential to my vocation or my continued ability to provide for my family as a commentator. But, sure. I'm if that happened, that would be amazing. So, it also just sort of happened that, the product that I opened pointed me in a very strong direction. It's just how the wind blew at the time. But I'd been following Riftbound and obviously by extension, what you guys are doing here for a couple of months, 3 months, I think 2-3 months before the release in the West, and including your coverage, a lot of your co-streams, Cass, your late nights that you stayed up. I sort of tried to tune into those and editing. And it was tough because at first, we're watching the Chinese stream of I think a Guangzhou region or something like that. And I don't know what the cards do. And obviously the spotting is in Chinese. So I have another monitor and I'm just searching for card art that matches what I'm seeing on the screen. Because obviously you at 3 a.m. are not going to tell us the name and effect of every single card that comes up. That's not how the co-stream goes. So that was a fun experience for me. acquiring that information. But yeah, look, I've decided that I want to play decks that are known to be strong here, and then learn them, because Kai'Sa, for example, I think is actually rich in skill expression. And frankly, what I see at a lot of my locals right now is that a lot of Kaisers are getting middling results because you've got to really, there's a lot of value propositions you've got to understand. Some cards in Kaiser replace themselves, some do not. And your opponents are, of course, going to try and put you in positions where you don't get as easy value off a lot of your damage-based kill spells or, that kind of stuff. So a lot of us Kaisers, including myself, are going like 2-2, 2 and 3 at our locals to a lot of these Yi decks that are a bit more straightforward to play. So I have decided that's a challenge well worth taking up, and I've got to give a shout out to Randy TCG, whose guide has been immensely helpful in understanding how to play the Kai'Sa, but also shout out to Mo, who's got some great content about it as well. And there's such great content already out there on Riftbound, this show no exception, which is awesome to help people dive into. But yeah, that's the long story about how I'm looking to approach Riftbound. I'd love to cast this game, but even if that didn't eventuate, I'd be more than happy just being a part of this community, because it's very cool to be part of something new, something that's spinning up, and also something that I also have personal ties to going back years in terms of the world of Runeterra, even if I wasn't a huge lore player, but definitely a big league guy in my time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I mean, me too. I've been doing Riot stuff for like 13 years. So I'm with you. This is like long time coming. My league references are like Charmer's Magic references, where they're very aged, they're well worn.
We've all got our vices, Cass. It's fine.
Look, I remember this, and this is topical. I remember when Xin Zhao was released. Okay, that was how long ago I was playing. He was
I remember when he was alive.
The most broken character in any competitive game I'd ever seen make release, and it was unbelievable. Like you'd pick Xin Zhao, which is auto win. Now he's dead. R.I.P.
Yeah,
I think.
Right.
I don't know. I didn't watch the video.
Australia didn't always have a server, so we played on NA for quite some time. I remember the day Australia's servers came out, we all got on like really early to start playing and experience what less than 80 ping actually felt like. Most of the time, I was 120 ms to NA servers, and I was like South Central Australia, so it made sense. So that was a big day for Australia. And obviously, we had a League of Legends circuit, something that Pastry Time, for example, very well acquainted with, as he was one of the casters that I sort of came a little further after him and Papa, and sort of learned from them and became a league caster as well. So it goes back, my love of League of Legends. I was never very good at that game, I won't lie, but it didn't matter. It captured me and a lot of my friends for quite some time, and I think there's definitely something special about now seeing that combined with a TCG that has a great system that's really engaging, and it's another opportunity for me to get out to locals and talk some shop.
Yeah, one thing in that vein, like you said, having gone to some Nexus nights, I have noticed that there's a surprisingly large number of non-former Magic players that are playing, which is not the case for pretty much any game I've ever played. For the most part, with Flesh and Blood, and with other games that I've played in the past, like you can go, did you play Magic? Okay, so you tap your land and then just immediately explain the game in Magic terms, and you can get people like 85% of the way there. This, it's like, oh, so have you played Magic? And they're like, nope. I'm like, what about Commander? Like, nope, I'm a Lorcana player. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, so
I got absolutely pooped on by a Lorcana player the other night, by the way. As soon as he took his first game action, I realized he'd been a grinder for 15 years, because they've got a way about them, right? He was giving me the whole north to south, east to west Kibble shuffle action. I'm like, I'm dead. I'm dead. And he absolutely greased me with Victor. It was disgusting. So I've seen a lot of but you're right. There was a player in front of me who had like the Jolly Roger. What's Monkey D. Luffy shit called?
Oh, One Piece. Yeah,
like a One Piece mat, right?
Yeah, I'm like, are you a One Piece player? He's like, no, I never played TCGs actually. I just like One Piece, but Riftbound is the first TCG I'm getting into. I'm like, or a lot of people are like, I played Commander casually or whatever. So yeah, that is definitely, I think, shaped some of what I've witnessed at a lot of sort of locals. There's also a lot of local stores in LA that I hadn't frequently sort of frequented, because I was playing Flesh and Blood, and the number of stores that sort of offer play opportunities for that game is more limited. I had to travel 40 minutes to my local, not live in Los Angeles. Like, that's crazy. But I've seen also them get to grips with running Riftbound tournaments. And I've heard such different impressions. Like I was listening to the Nexus Cast guys that were saying they had like 50-person locals, like 6 rounds of play. And I'm like, dude, really? We turned up and they told us they weren't pairing us at all. We would just find a game, and then they raffled up the top cut pricing just randomly to people. And they're like, well, if you didn't get it, come back next week. And I'm like, because I'm obviously approaching this game as a bit more of a competitor. And so I'd say 3 out of 4 of the Nexus nights I've played were unpaired. One of them that was, the store owner's like, we're just really stressed tonight. Like, we've got other stuff going on, so we're going to run best of 1. And I'm like, my sideboard? He's like, no, can't sideboard. I'm like, I just died a victor immediately.
Yeah.
And I literally, like, both my losses a victor. I'm like, I'm trying to, experience the competitive side of this game. But I've noticed that there are a fair few stores in LA that are still sort of adopting that a bit more slowly. And they're also trying to be cognizant of product availability, which is obviously, a bit of gripe you guys have talked about a bunch on the show, where it's like, proxies are totally fine. I'm like, that's fine with me, right? I got lucky. I was able to build the deck that I wanted to play. But it has been a little tricky for me to get like a competitive experience out of the gate for this game. And it's required me to just sort of, take a moment and also think and realize I come from one of the most hardcore TCG communities in the world. Like Flesh and Blood is like the Dark Souls of card games, right? There are no casuals. Every locals feels like a Nats. And, people aren't, even though the vibe is amazing outside of the game. Like
everyone's so friendly.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to bring that as well. Like, I see, like, I'm really trying to bring that into sort of Riftbound as well, as much as I can. And, and I'm seeing that from a lot of other people as well. There's a real willingness to, like, go the extra mile to help spin up community, to help make people feel welcome. I've noticed that at my Nexus nights, which is amazing because you hear a ton of horror stories from other sort of TCGs and, whether it's angle shooting or something. My friend was playing at, One Piece Regionals in San Diego. He's like, I got my opponent cheated and I ended up getting knocked out of top cut contention. I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, dude, signing up for a One Piece event is like trying to get the NFT drop that everyone wants as it is. It's like impossible. And it's as bad as maybe Riftbound is out in China. And then you've got guys that are just cheating against you. Like, well, I'm sorry. I just never, I'm privileged. I've never seen that in Flesh and Blood. Right? I go there for a competitive experience, I get the competitive experience, get my ass whooped, I barely walk properly out of the local, and I come back next week and do it all again. So, I would not say that my game's been super competitive right now, but I've had some learning opportunities. I still have a long way to go, but it's awesome to see so many stores that are offering play opportunities for Riftbound.
I'm so with you on hoping that we can just get this community to be as close to the like Fab community as possible and not be like what I've heard the horror stories of One Piece. And like for you said you went to 4 locals, I also went to 4 locals. 1 was completely unpaired, 2 were best of 1, and then 1, which is my normal game store that I always go to, did do best of 3. Some of that was me being vocal about it, and then other players were a part of that.
I thought I made vocal, but I let it go. Yeah.
Yeah. But like other players also wanted it. It wasn't like, oh, I just want to play best of 3. There was like a good, like more people in that room wanted to play best of 3 than didn't. And so we were like, can this be like a spot where we can always come play best of 3? Because the game is very designed. We had a full episode about this. I don't need to dive into it, but like the battlefields and the sideboard are so important to play. So for anybody who wants to practice for, especially like Vegas, I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah right now. A lot of players here are driving down to Vegas to go play this event. So they want these like best of 3 reps to be ready to go. So it's been a lot of fun, but also I've been recognized for the channel because I guess a lot of people are kind of like sweats locally, right? Like they really want to grind the game. So they've been watching for a while,
we all
right?
We all go looking for this stuff.
Yeah.
Like you guys are one of the first shows like for Riftbound. Like you know that. I'm sure that's half the reason why you're doing it, but yeah, it's really important.
So they'd recognize me, and because of that, every judge call has been, Cass, you have time to walk over here and like, can you explain this? And I've been more than willing. It's been like honestly a joy for me to like teach people these things. And they're like, when people figured out how Ride the Wind works, they were like shook. They're like, wait, so I can move this from this battlefield to this battlefield even though it doesn't have ganking? And I'm like, yeah, man. Yeah, Ride the Wind's that's a fucked up card right there.
Trying to explain to people that if your guy's getting Falling Star and you recall him and you have no other like valid targets for Falling Star, your opponent has to select their units as targets for Falling Star. If you recall something out of the way, like some of these like minutia, like there's some really interesting weird minutia, and obviously a lot of rules errata that came out early. So I think players are often, I see them, Cass, looking around like, does anyone know like what is supposed to happen here? Like another one is, when you're attacking a battlefield, and then an enemy moves into it from another, and people are like, who's the attacker? And having to explain to some locals that like, okay, well, there's been a challenge that's occurred as a result of this player being brought in, and there's some like interesting rules here. So there's definitely a dearth of like that expertise out there local. So if you guys out there know your stuff and you've checked these rules before, like don't hesitate to sort of pass it on. People will never
help everyone.
Never feel like they're being sort of talked down to.
I have also become the de facto judge for the events that I've gone to, because I did a bunch of the demo days for the store. Like I reached out to the store beforehand and was like, hey, I will run demos at the store if you want. So it's been awesome to see a lot of people who I taught the game still coming back. And like there's a player last week that it was the player I brought it up on the show. Now that I remember, they opened a pack and they ran over to me and they're like, is this card good? And it was a signed Victor. And I'm like, yeah, that was the best thing you could have opened. And then this week, I just got back from a Nexus night. They were over like, holding court, playing a 4-player game with a bunch of people and like teaching other people how to play. So that was amazing. But
pay it forward.
I'm curious if you have had the same experience, if you all have had the same experience as me, or if this is a particular to my area because it's a little bit more casual than what you're saying. Like I think multiplayer is more the flavor of what people are wanting in my area. But the number one thing that I have been asked about more than any other rule is, how does inviting another player in combat work? And I have to be like,
I'm glad they changed that.
So it doesn't exist anymore. Like the number of people who have asked about that or have been somewhat excited about it and like are like, oh no, you got to invite people in. And I'm like,
nope.
You don't.
Everyone gets priority, but you can't have.
You just play like a normal
people's
game.
Units. Yeah.
You don't have this weird sub game in the middle of the game
bizarre,
for some reason.
No, it's like playing Shahrazad in Magic. It's like we have a sub game now about how you get invited to a showdown that you're not involved in to further your aims of winning a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we just allowed that to be open.
It was the rule originally. I was messaging Dave like months ago about it because I was talking about the rules, and he said the original name for the rule was the Buddhist isekai, and because you're going from one way.
Stop! No, we're cutting it right now.
Oh god! No! I literally I heard you talk about that, and I thought I was on some form of psychedelics. I was like, I put my headset on, and I'm halfway through the Buddhist isekai, and I'm like, oh man, that dark chocolate's got something in there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. At some point, we will talk more about Stuart Little and the implications in the Buddhist faith and isekais. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's a good co-stream topic. The all the people who are coming from Legends of Runeterra Fight Night immediately hear Blev say Stuart Little, and they start having just like flashbacks. They're just like they're like locked in the chair. It's like, please, no, I don't need to.
Yeah, it's
I don't need to keep fighting with him again.
No, I just want to play the cards.
Oh God. All right. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we as casters, we always have that topic with our co-caster that we fall back on if we need to feel heavily. So I get it. For me, it's explaining anime concepts to Matt and him purposely being obtuse in failing to understand them. And mine is pretend not to understand basketball. So we all have them. If you have your favorite commentators, like I know Tasos and Artosis always fall back on a lot of the similar things.
Well, hold on.
Mine is to try and make Blevins break and with just like tying very obscure references to the like actual thing that's happening. So my favorite example is in Legends of Runeterra, there was the Shurima deck that would level all your champions like 3 times, and you'd have to sit there for a 60-second long cutscene. And every time it would start, the one time it started, I said, I can hear Maria Menounos on Nuvi already. We've got
trivia before the movie,
which is just like, if you go to theaters, you see her face. And that got Blev so much that he continues to reference it. His is to try and make me cringe or be upset at the reference he makes, and that's where we've gotten.
Or the conspiracy theory I point out, like that Arby's is sponsoring the best unit in Riftbound. We did come up with that. Yep.
Yeah, horrible horrible joke, but it is good. You know, it gets you.
If you didn't know, it's Ravenbloom Student, Arby's. They've got the meat.
Yeah, it's
Every
terrible,
time you cast
isn't it,
a spell,
right?
you get the meat.
I get it. That's fine. We do need acronyms. We're gonna, a couple months, we are gonna get to the position of needing acronyms for some of these cards. So I respect it.
All right. Well, speaking on casting, I guess this is the greatest segue of all time. We'll go into our main topic for the day. Which is,
Why though?
Why go into the main topic? I at some point we just have to get to the main topic, right? Like at some stage of a podcast, you kind of like do some amount of structure. Blevins, you'll get this when you're older. You'll understand later.
No.
It'll all make sense. It'll make sense eventually. But the main topic is casting TCGs, casting Riftbound. We kind of talked about it a little bit at the start of the show. Mitch was talking about how much you need to know to cast a TCG effectively. It really is an information game. I mean, in Runeterra, when I was doing Runeterra, it was like I could identify pretty much every single card in the game just by artwork. Some amount of them I could identify by the voice line that when they got played. You just kind of, when you're doing it enough and you're so ingrained in the game, you get to this point where you can understand everything. And it is important in TCGs that you have that, because when the deck that nobody's playing, this rogue deck, appears on your screen, as a commentator, you need to be able to figure out on the fly what that player is thinking when they constructed this deck. Like, how are these pieces coming together? Yeah. You need to understand how some of the interactions work. You need to understand how, in theory, it could play into certain meta decks that it may be up against. So you don't just kind of study what you'll see most of the time. You have to kind of have this holistic view of the entire game, and it can make for TCGs to be challenging, especially when you're in a 60-minute round where sometimes you've gone over the same information 60, 70 times, and you have to start talking about Stuart Little or something like that. But you have to find a way to still be entertaining while presenting good information. And I mean, Mitch, we can have you go off on what you think about TCG casting and how you like to initially approach it. I know you already mentioned approaching it just like as a competitive game, but if there's anything you want to expand on that for TCGs, we can go to you first, and then, Blevins and Charmer, like we've all cast TCGs for years and years and years. Yeah. I'd love for everyone to kind of chime in with some of the ways that they like to look at it from a holistic view before we dive deeper.
Fab was my first TCG that I casted. I really wanted in the past to get into like Magic and some other stuff like that. I think I had a good conversation with Paul Cheon about it, but it didn't really eventuate at the time, which is a shame. I think sort of Watsy kind of toned down how they were approaching the broadcast, which is a shame. So let's give an example in like Riftbound terms. So when you're watching two players play, it's really important, first of all, especially as a play-by-play caster, is to be able to convey to the audience like what the approximate balance of power is in a game, right? Like I think we have that in chess broadcasts, for example, like an advantage bar. I think a verbal version of that at all times is really important because it helps you like highlight the stakes and also like give you like a bird's eye view of where the game is at. Play-by-play casters, and now I get away with this because I'm a PvP guy, you don't have to have as deep a level of like first-hand experience with every deck. It definitely does help. I've found every time I've changed heroes in Flesh and Blood, which isn't often, I will say, I've become better at casting as a result of that, as long as I don't go overboard and sometimes try and insert my knowledge of a matchup in, which every time we had a Dorinthia game, I would do just because I just knew all the lines. But so you have to sort of temper that a little bit. But like your opponents on Kaiser, for example, like, you're playing against Kaiser, you need to understand like if they're representing a Void Seeker, if they are going to hit you with a Watcher next turn, is it Cleave Darius? Are they going to accelerate their Kaiser at you or not? Are they likely to pull off the battlefields? Are they likely to try and hold? What the strategy is here. Like you as the opponent need to know that. And as the commentator, you need to understand that from both sides. You also need to know if the Ari is representing On Guard or if it's Discipline or if it's Time War that's going to come out or whatever. So not because you need to spend 90% of your time talking through potential lines. I would restrict that to about 10% of my discussion. But it's very important to say is if player is in a good position or not, because when you construct a narrative throughout the course of the game, which I recommend every caster does, every game is a story, every tournament is a bigger story, and every circuit is as bigger than that story, right? I like to tell stories on 3 levels as a TCG commentator, and I just call them level 1, 2, 3. It's one of the devices I talk with, casters I give reviews to on it. But in the turn cycle, there's a story, and who wins out on the turn cycle? Like who's got a better value exchange here? And how does that sort of fill into the story of the overall balance of the game? Has this player now made up for missing his 2-drop, or, you know, from getting blown out by a Defile or whatever? Like, this matters a whole lot. So TCGs, more than any other game, I think really do require this level of domain knowledge, and you've got to get in there and play it. You don't have to go out to your locals. You can certainly do it online. My split of playing to consuming content in TCGs is actually like 50-50. In FPS, it's like 80% watching, 20% playing. That's a time constraint thing, but the domain knowledge is a little bit easier to obtain. And once you have it, it's more evergreen. But in TCGs, set rotations require you to continuously update that knowledge. The matchup spreads change as well.
Yep.
Card interactions might also change if there's new combos or whatever. So I would say to any prospective casters, the effort to reward matrix is not super favorable in TCGs. So you really, really need to love it. You need to love it so much. And it might take you running your own tournament for a TCG at your own cost to do it, or it might take you staying up all night with Blevins trying to throw you off when you have to talk about a costume. Like, I do think that's what it requires if you want to be a caster in TCGs. And every time a new title comes up in sort of gaming, esports, and in TCG, there's always a new wave of casters that want to come in. So what I would say to them is that fundamentals are really important. I do think that in TCGs, a play-by-play commentator is still important. It is not as dynamic a game, but it can be. And your job as a play-by-play guy is to reestablish and update the game state, the stakes of the match, and tell your opponent what is actually happening. I've watched a fair bit of Riftbound commentary right now at this point, and I want to see a little bit more of actually explaining what the players' actions are. Even if you and I can tell that, like, a Ravenbloom Student is being played to base. I want there to be, like, there's another level we can go to. It might seem banal, but there are a lot of people that want to get into this game. And like me, when I was watching like the Chinese content, even without co-streams, I was like, what the heck is going on here? Like, the production value was high, but obviously like it was just really hard for me to understand. And the color commentators, there are going to be a lot of you, because what it takes to be a color commentator in card games is for you to know the game really well. But the people who make the card games want to see proven results a lot of the time from the color commentators. If they can get that, you will often see pro players elevated to that expert position, and the play-by-play guy expected to facilitate that discussion, right? So the play-by-play people, if you're like me and you're kind of bad at games, but you're good at talking, this is sort of where you want to be. But having really good fundamentals is crucial. Telling the story on like different levels and being able to like go up in between scopes. So like talk about the tournament, what it means in the grand scheme of things, right? Then you talk about the matchup, the two individuals playing the game and how their legends sort of compare. And then you talk about turn-to-turn stories, right? There's 3 levels, and you want to be able to bounce between those as much as you can. And really reiterate those stakes. How important is the turn? Is the game over if this player does not do a certain thing? Do you see something that is a potential blowout? Ton of stuff. I'm still figuring it out. You guys, I'm sure, have plenty of thoughts as well. This would be, if I cast Riftbound, my second TCG. So I've been doing this for a long, long time, but most of the other stuff has been FPS and MOBA and other stuff. So I had to learn a lot when I came into this myself.
Yeah, I want to Blevins and Charmer to go, but I think that this is a good time for me to jump in, because you mentioned, this is your second TCG. This is my second TCG realistically casting. I've cast some Flesh and Blood, but I did like a Battle Hardened, and I've done some show matches. So realistically, this would be number 2 of trying to jump into a bigger game. But for TFT, which is another big part of my portfolio of casting, it has a lot of similarities to what you're talking about. How I approach TFT is very similar to how you're talking about how you like to approach TCGs, of the layers of story, right? There's my lobby, but there's also, even between that layer, there's a single turn. And then from that lobby, there is the single day. And then from there, it's the entire tournament. And from there, it's maybe the entire set is also part of that narrative and story that I'm trying to construct from the ground up when I'm going about casting one of those events. And you talked about FPS, 80% watching, 20% playing. TFT, I tried to do closer to 50-50, but often it became better for me to watch just the 1% of players to learn even more. Then it would take so much more time investment to do that as a player than versus a watching. So I ended up with probably close to an 80-20 split on watching Teamfight Tactics versus playing it. And I think that it even might happen with Riftbound if there's enough content for me to consume. I mean, China's helping me out with all these tournaments to be able to really dig in. And the nice thing with the co-stream is it's not a cast yet. I might we might change some of these co-streams up to be more of a cast, but right now it gives me time to really into the very specifically and find that out. But I agree with a lot of really everything that Uber's saying, as far as you want to be creating this story, you want to be telling the audience what is happening, and then giving a why, giving this reason why they are doing this, what could they be thinking, and trying to dig into the mental of that player while still presenting the information of this is exactly what is happening and what could come from the other side. I also think I'm somebody where in TFT there is this blend of play-by-play and color, and I think that this happened in Legends of Runeterra as well, where you don't have one play-by-play and one color, but you have two kind of hybrid casters. And while I think that you can have traditional roles in TCGs, there is a level of blending that happens. It doesn't feel like your play-by-play can just get by on not like digging into some analysis from time to time. And this is exactly what you were saying as well, Uber, where you get in a Dorinthia match, for example, and you know all of these lines, but knowing each and every hero, you're still going to be able to get there as a play-by-play, and you need to know so much more information to play-by-play the moment effectively. And so having these kind of blurred roles between two people, where one is skewing more color, one is skewing more play-by-play, I think these dials end up being really solid for TCG casting, where both players are bouncing off each other, or both casters are bouncing off each other to recognize what could happen in this moment, why that might happen, and then recognizing from both sides what these win conditions are, and establishing in that moment exactly who is currently winning. And I think that you summed it up really, really well, Uber. So I think there's a lot that you can pull on from different games and bring into TCGs, but then you have to spread it over that 60 minutes and be able to find good ways to let your audience know that this 60-minute story can be told in a really compelling way when you finally reach that end. And it's funny because in a lot of casting that you and I have done, I did MOBAs as well before, there's a lot of hype moments. TFT, there's a lot of hype moments, and we've both been play-by-plays. I play-by-play a lot in TFT, and you kind of have this like big explosive moment, and people don't think about that in TCGs. But one of the most iconic calls for me in TCGs, as somebody who's been in Flesh and Blood, is your Arthur Trehay winning call. And this is something that people probably don't talk about in TCGs as much, is where you can actually be really excitable and hype, because it's just guys throwing cards on the table. But there are these like really human moments of that top deck. And if you construct the narrative well enough, if you build that moment enough with your tone, with how you continue to start somewhere small and build it to something big, you can create these like very iconic spots. My favorite call of all time comes from Legends of Runeterra, like of my personal work, and it's the World Championship win for Aragorn. And it was all because Skarzig helped me craft this like final moment of building up Teddy, who was in the final against Aragorn, and it's basically Teddy's fall of not being able to win his Golden Road and losing it to Aragorn at that last moment and him snatching it away. And it's like, that narrative was so nice. And I think that, you had the same thing with Arthur Trehay and like this buildup of this game and finally ripping that sigil off the top. And I just like love that card games can have those moments as well.
I think you're never going to get criticism for like forcing a moment or manufacturing hype when you're like obviously very invested. And I think like retelling these stories, and this is like one thing I want to say about Riftbound, is that like one thing that really attracts me to opportunities like this is like there are some great stories to tell, and there's some people that really deserve, I think, for being exceptional at what they do as players, and also humans sometimes, that really deserve to be highlighted. Like George's story to me is really compelling. I think I was really glad to have him interviewed, or hear him interviewed by you guys, and understand a bit of what it took for him to go out to China apropos of nothing and with no guarantees that he'd be able to compete and go out there and actually find success. So that's just one of the early stories coming out of this game. So that sigil moment for me was, there's a lot of help, there's a lot of backup. I had it whispered in my ear that the only out was a sigil of solace in that moment. And we had been really building tension in that game because it was close back and forth, and I was really invested in the result. And I remember when it happened because my co-commentator Brian Gottlieb actually grabbed my hand.
I saw
and held my own.
It's iconic.
On camera, we were both so shocked to see it come off the top. So there's definitely opportunities for stuff like that. And the more in love with what you do and the game you are, the easier it is going to be able to find those stories and tell them with authenticity. And the one thing that's always the same, no matter what game I've casted, is that there are extraordinary humans involved. And those are the stories that I'm most excited about telling. It's a privilege, I think, to have a hand in crafting narratives, providing obviously that you're staying faithful to them. For me, that's like the greatest honor. It's kind of what keeps me coming back to this, is that these people, would not necessarily bring this spotlight upon themselves. They literally just love what they do. And like seeing exceptional humanity makes me feel strongly about evangelizing it and sharing that with the world and putting my own spin on it. And, it's very satisfying to me. So hopefully those opportunities, turn up in Riftbound. I'm sure they will. Whoever has them, I hope that they love what they do enough to truly take advantage of it.
Do it justice?
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I think it's like a disservice when they can't, and it's rare that you do see the spots where a disservice is done.
Yeah.
But it exists, and you hope that it ever happens, right? Okay. All right, Uber and I will stop.
This is our show. We can say whatever we want.
All right. Well, Blevin, Charmer, I want you guys to get in on your takes on TCG
I want to
casting
hear
as
Charmer
well.
because Charmer has cast more TCGs than I think most people know exist.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at my history, and like, I'm not going to count my one-off stuff for charity stuff or whatever. Like I did Marvel Snap once or whatever, but if I
broadcasted Gwent, come on, he's out of it.
So like if I count everything that I've done multiple events for, and I start casting Riftbound, it will be my 9th trading card game. Trading card games is how I got into casting. The quick intro, if you have no idea who I am, and I don't blame you, because why would you? I fell into casting by accident, and I was teaching college. I've always loved trading card games, played them for a long time. So I decided to make some, like, here's how to play the Elder Scrolls Legends, which was a Bethesda card game, on YouTube, and Bethesda really liked it. And so they started hiring me for going to like PAX, doing other things, and then eventually for casting. So that was my intro. I kind of learned how to cast first with card games. And for me, I think Mitch very beautifully summed up many of the challenges, but I think I would like to dial in just a little bit more on some of them. The first is, in cast too, because you talk about how, there's not as set of a play-by-play and a color, right? And I agree. I think it's a very blurred line when it comes to trading card games. When I go into a broadcast, I actually prefer to think of it as for each segment, because this can change from round to round. I like to think of you have an anchor and an expert. So one person's going to take the role of kind of the play-by-play and also setting up questions. And then the expert is the person who can answer and provide both the context and the story. So like as a good example, I was casting Flesh and Blood with a wonderful player named Rhea. She's fantastic. And in one of the rounds, we were watching a Prism player, and it's not a deck that I was familiar with. So I kind of took the anchor role, and I would say, what does the Prism player need to do here? Bounce these kinds of questions off of her so that then it sets her up for success. She can relay the knowledge both to myself, but also to the audience. And then later in the same event, it was kind of the roles were reversed, right? Because I'm a assassin player in that game. That is a class that you can play. And I've played all of the different heroes for that. And so we kind of flopped. But I think that it is important for casters in trading card games to be able to kind of do both, because there is no reliance on the action itself. The way that I like to think of action in trading card games is it's contextual. I've casted some events for like Apex Legends, early days of Valorant. I did some stuff, especially the community events. And in shooters, if a viewer tunes in and they have never seen the game before, it still doesn't take them long to kind of pick up what is happening and or what is good, right? In an FPS, in a shooter game, if you eliminate an opponent, that's an obvious good thing most of the time, right? So there's very little that they need to know. You tune into a card game for the first time, and they might not even know how you win the game, what the players are doing. And so all of that context matters. Yes, they're going to see cards go onto the table, but without you to contextualize it, it's just cards on a table. It does not communicate the same way that many other games do. And the other thing that I think is really important, and it's something that I usually try to stress when I'm broadcasting, is you don't have to do it for everything, but it does help to reiterate what could be rudimentary things because you don't know who's tuning in, right? You're going to have a wide spectrum of an audience for a card game, everything from new players to experienced veterans. And it does help, especially during the slow bits, to go over some of those basics that might help a new player get accustomed to watching coverage as well. And my experience, thankfully you guys skipped right over me. I love you for it. My experience at my Nexus nights has been very new player-ish. The one that I was able to attend, half of the people just had starter decks and were not from Magic or anything else. Like they were League fans who showed up to play the game. So in a broadcast sense, you have to remember that there's potentially going to be a lot of those. And even if it's somebody who's coming from League and they recognize the characters, they still won't understand why some of the plays are important. Storytelling is a big part of it as well. You guys are talking about hype moments. For myself, my personal favorite call of all time is actually from the first Master Series that I did. I was literally in the process of talking through a way that somebody could win the game. Like it was an out and then they hit it and the person misplayed it. So we had both an eruption for they hit the thing and then they misplayed it. And so then there was like that secondary rush of like, oh my God, now what? But a lot of that gets set up again through talking about the context, right? And I think that it's really important specifically for these games. Again, just to beat that horse to death, there is no action. At the end of the day, it's just two people sitting across the table from each other. As far as challenges go, I also think something that doesn't get talked about enough, especially if you're just breaking into casting, because a lot of times you're going to start by casting locals, you might do remote events or whatever, is that the production quality is not always as nice as, say, the Chinese events have been for Riftbound. So you might not be able to see all of a card. Glare is a thing. Bad cameras are a thing. Pixelation is a thing. Oh, yeah. And so that game knowledge comes in extra important because you might not be able to read it. You might not even be able to see the card art. But if you know a deck list and you know that, hey, they just spent, 2 resources, well, then it can only be maybe like one of only 2 cards, for example. And then you start racking your brain so that you can still update the audience on what's happening if the visuals aren't there. And that is something that takes time, and it definitely helps if you've played the game a bunch. Another challenge that I think pops up very often is that you might also run into situations where there's a lot of downtime, right? Again, just like with shooters, there's action and then there's like set periods of uptime and downtime for skirmishes and whatever. But in card games, if somebody goes into the tank, and I'm going to say this because everybody on this show has casted or watched Flesh and Blood. If you're casting a Brody Spurlock who's going to take like 5 minutes to take a turn, you have to fill that air. And you can't just like go off into the isekai story and then come back. You want to keep people in the moment, at least in my opinion. I think you still want to stress the importance of it. So that can be a struggle as well, because you have to kind of maintain that level of interest and excitement during very long breaks at times. So that's another challenge that I would highlight.
When Brody got his first warning for slow play, it was immediately after being casted by Brian Gottlieb and myself. Brian stood up and was like, no, doing something about this right now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is tough. It is tough, man. Yeah.
I was going to say that just a quick one on that, Charmer, if you have more to keep going, but specifically for that note is a lot of times when you get these big tank moments, the reason you can't do an isekai story, you can't do this tangent, because usually these are happening in Top Cut. This is not the time for us to have our funny, our happy fun time, do little silly bits, right? Because silly bits, those as a caster, you will recognize there is a time and a place for a silly bit, and often
not all of them do recognize that.
You're right. Not everybody recognizes. Blevins has a silly bit problem sometimes, but not everybody recognizes when you can't do the silly bit.
Doctor.
And Top Cut is generally not the place for it. So you can get a quick one in, but it's generally not the time to go off on a big tangent. And so you do have to take that 10-minute turn, 5-10 minute turn, and you have to keep the tension that Uber was talking about earlier, that I was talking about earlier, right? Of building this narrative and stretching it out, because often this moment is going to then translate to potentially the game-winning decision or game-winning top deck. They may recognize that their only out is to draw a card, and they have to, do this moment where they draw a card and go there. And you've kind of have to build this thing and keep it in suspense for 5 minutes to lock that down. And that is a skill in itself. That is hard because you don't want to keep looping the same things that you're saying over and over again. You need this to stretch. You can't.
The runway is moving. It's getting longer and shorter right in front of you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it is one of the biggest challenges I think you will ever have in a TCG is being able to extend the runway and keep running and keep going. And I don't even have specific advice for that other than give yourself room. You can always cut yourself short to make the moment as long as you finesse it enough, right? Like if you're going too long, you have to give yourself these outs, right? But if you don't give yourself the room to keep going, you are going to run out of steam. And I'm curious, Mitch, if you have a similar idea, or if you're kind of on an opposite end of this, of like how you like to go about those like longer times, because I like to give myself multiple kind of out points and be able to extend those if I need to.
The simplest way I can answer that is that I will shift my lens size between my 3 storytelling modes in moments like that, right? If the turn cycle is no longer really providing any compelling sort of discussion, I'll move and talk more broadly about the matchup, either the heroes and how they fit into the metagame, or the players and the days or the journeys that they've sort of had up until this point. Now, if that sort of runs dry, then we go up another level. And then I start talking about the tournament and its role, like where we are, like you mentioned in like TFT sets, great example, like where we are at in Origins right now. Like, what's on the horizon? How do these decks potentially stand to benefit or struggle or change as a result of new cards coming to the game? You can go that far out. You can even go as far out as being like, I can't believe we're doing a card game tournament here in Wichita, Kansas. Whoever thought we'd be here? Not me, and then I'll adjust that lens, as I go. So there's always a different scale that you can address sort of what's happening at the moment on. And then it really depends on your co-commentator, but normally like you can start to see if there's a game action that's going to be taken, you can zoom back in, but you definitely don't want to repeat yourself. I will go and reestablish game state because after about 5 minutes or so, I'm going to assume that a number of our viewers also just clicked on. So it's like, radio commentators, you ever listen to them, especially in baseball, especially in football. I learned from a lot of them via just like, reading books from like Tom Hedrick, for example, The Art of Sports Casting. Recommend you pick that up if you're ever going to cast. He's always about, as a radio caster, which is where I started, reiterating the score and the time in the game quite frequently, right? It's obvious for radio broadcast, but it's also quite helpful, to reiterate the game state in TCGs. Yeah.
This is probably my favorite episode ever because goddamn is Mitch good at explaining what's in my brain.
I think about it all the time. Yeah.
I mean, I love that. And that's why I was trying to say that for me, I think it's really important to just remember that you have to meet the audience where they are and they're all at a different spot. So they might have just joined. And so, yes, Mitch is saying it can feel kind of tedious at times to keep reiterating what people know is there, but not everyone tunes in at the same time. Another thing that I think is forgotten about, if I'm being entirely honest, is that a lot of people will still watch broadcasts on mobile devices. And so even if it's on the screen, it doesn't mean that it's very clear to them. So they might still also be relying on the audio. And I know that for broadcasts, it's very common for me to put on like a live stream while I'm working on stuff and I'm just listening to it. And then if a hype thing happens or whatever, then I'll turn and look. And so I think all of those audio kind of cues are still really important for a broadcast. I mean, I also could talk forever just because I love it, but I will end on one last thing before I throw it to Blev for his thing. And this is kind of a continuation of what I was talking about with the filling the dead air. The other big challenge that I think comes up is when you are trying to communicate information that you don't have. So what I mean by that is it's not common for you to have player comms. Again, big broadcasts, they might pipe that in, but you might have to rely on like, where are they pointing? What are they doing with their hands? Because you can't hear them talking to each other. Another really big one is judge calls. When the game stops and you're expected to kind of like fill the space, you might be talking about, okay, what could the judge call be here? What would be the implications of said judge call? Again, you're probably going to be watching hands on the table and interactions if that's still on display, or sometimes they'll kick it back to you on the caster desk and then you just have to fill for a bit while they work it out and then you have to announce the results. So things like that are, I think, also really important to just kind of have a plan for, because something happens. I've never been at a broadcast where it's been 100% perfect. So you kind of have to just know what your go-tos are in certain situations.
Yeah. Sometimes there's a literal storm and you have to potentially run for the hills on a
I'm never going to live that
broadcast.
down, am I?
I can't believe it.
I don't know. Legends of Runeterra broadcast, Riot yelled at me and told me I had to go to my basement because tornado sirens were going off and I was going to try to cast through it.
You wanted
That's
to
what
stay.
Blevins is referring to.
You wanted to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, the captain goes down with the ship. Look, so much awesome stuff has been said. I don't want to go over a ton of it because it was said so well, and I agree with everything that's been said. For me, I feel like I take a less academic approach, for better or for worse. If you
Really?
couldn't tell.
I never thought that is no.
But so it for me, just the way that my brain works and the way that I've done everything has been like it's improv, right? And that's what a lot of casting is. That's what a lot of performing and entertaining is, right? It's improv. It's being able to react to what is going on, new information being given, being able to react and turn that into something that's entertaining, reacting and melding with your co-caster, I think is really important. I think that I shine as a color commentator, I guess would be the role for it, but I've been host and play-by-play depending on what the other caster has been. It's just I can essentially flex to what is needed for the broadcast. What I will say that is not necessarily academic, but is that helps with all of this is, as Mitch said, like having that foundation of fundamentals, having that foundation, that broad knowledge, that base level of knowledge is really necessary. You can't. It's like the analogy with Picasso, right? Picasso did not just start painting these obscure paintings. You know, the abstract didn't just start painting abstract art and it was genius, right? Picasso was an art master and then created this new art form essentially, right? Like Picasso was a master and then went above and beyond with the crazy abstract art. But Picasso would not be Picasso if he wasn't a master in the first place, right? You need to have that knowledge. You need to know. You need to know you need to know what is going on so that you know where you can bend, where you can make the joke. Like you said, Cass, like I'm not bringing up the isekai story as the final card is being cast for the grand finals.
I have heard this happen. People have done this. They do that.
No. I know. It's about reading them. It's about reading the situation. And here's the thing. I always read the situation. I just choose to ignore it sometimes.
That's what they all say.
This is where he kills me, Uber. This is where he kills me.
No, I literally was introing a grand final in an Overwatch game, and Matt Morello, my co-commentator, interrupts me halfway through to make a joke about my outfit. I almost threw the monitor at him. I'm just like, what is it? Trust me, even the best do it. You know, it's crazy. Blav talks about not being academic, but I think he hits on the most important point about all this to me is that the fundamentals are really important to develop as a caster. But if you're not entertaining, go and do something else. Like if entertaining people is the number one, it is the most important thing. It is not about being right. It is not about sounding smart. It is not about saying nice words in the correct sequence in order to ingratiate people towards you and earn friends. It is about being entertaining. That's the core of everything we do. And it took esports broadcast a long time to realize that this was the most important thing. Is the reason why co-streams matter, because people want to relate to the person on screen. They want to be entertained by them. So if you can do that, I don't care if your fundamentals are shoddy. If you are genuinely entertaining and you are not self-indulgent about it, then I am going to enjoy your content. I'm going to enjoy listening to you talk about the game. You don't have to be an expert. You can bring an expert on. You can work on that angle a little bit more. But that to me has been the most important learning over my 10 plus years as a caster, is that entertainment is king.
I would be upset if I didn't bring up my absolute favorite TCG moment, cast moment of all time, the most hype moment ever. I can already tell Cass thinks this is a joke, but it's actually not.
No, I know you're serious this time.
It brings together basically everything that has been said, and it is an iconic MTG moment from
Peace,
the
Ollie?
Ravnica era. What's that? Oh, no, not
Is
Peace
this like a
Ollie.
Peace
No,
Ollie
no.
moment? Okay.
No. This is my my idol, the person who got me into wanting to cast it all. Randy Bueller and Mike Flores casting this match with Craig Jones, and Mike Flores is the quintessential overly technical, not really necessarily broadcaster. This is old days of Magic, like going into like, oh well, this guy is not good. This guy stinks. He's not good at Magic. Like he doesn't understand what's doing. Oh, that was a misplay. And Randy, being the consummate professional that he was, crafting that narrative, saying, no, he shouldn't do this. This is the line you go for. Knock on the deck. If it's a burn spell, you win. You char end a turn, knock on the deck, flip it over. You either win or you lose. Flips over the lightning helix. The most like hype Magic moment that I know of ever. Like in terms of broadcasting, I still get chills thinking about it. Like probably close to 20 years later. Absolutely Magic. If you just Google MTG Lightning Helix moment, it'll be there. It's absolutely fantastic. You should watch it. It really encapsulates that all. I like that moment really to me. 20 plus years later, I look back at it as a reason that I got into broadcasting, and as a reason I care about these things. It's for moments like that. So there it is.
All right. Well,
okay. Well,
let's go next.
let's go next. We had some other stuff to talk about, but this was a much more interesting topic. This was really great, Mitch. But let's quickly. We cannot skip our mailbag here. Do we want it?
Let's do there was a blog post that came out 30 seconds before we started. It's pretty small.
Literally 30 seconds before it happened. Go ahead, Cass.
So basically just a quick blog post from Dave, or I guess he tweeted it out, but it's a blog post from Riftbound talking about their learnings from the launch, kind of apologizing for some of the issues that happened and addressing how they want to fix them, which is kind of what we expected from Riot overall. It starts out with the rare redemption with the what I've been calling bugged packs. They're missing a rare. So you can actually send in a form where you can get you'll get rare cards sent to you, limit for 3 per person, based on if you kind of show an example of getting one of these packs that was missing a rare. And then they talked about the cutting of the cards and how they were using that thicker cardstock, and it has caused issues with the edges, which is why they look, let's be honest, terrible. A lot of the edges are awful. Fuzzy. They're really, really rough. They're fuzzy. And so they're addressing that and how they're going to adjust that in the future. They talked about shipping delays, and they're going to try and get things out faster. And now they're going to ship as things are available. So it's not going to all come out to everybody's door at the same time. They're just going to start shipping stuff out so that people are getting their product in hand. And they talked about getting more Riftbound to more players. They want everyone to be able to get Riftbound at MSRP is like their goal. They do not want people to be paying these above like exorbitant rates to get a box. So they're trying to send out more to LGSs by the end of the year. They should have a lot more. They're also going to be putting Proving Grounds cards into Nexus Night packs to try and mitigate some of this issue with, the Proving Grounds cost. It's unfortunate Proving Grounds being built like a board game does cause all those issues with trying to print more copies of it, because it is a bigger undertaking than printing a box of cards. And so that is just going to be an issue that they will regret, basically. And they're going to try and remedy it through Nexus Knights packs. I don't know that I missed anything else too terribly here in the article, but we can just jump into if anybody's got some initial thoughts on this, because for me it's just like, good, they're addressing the problems, they're admitting mistakes and trying to go from there, which is all you can really ask for. At the end of the day, you can be upset about all the problems that happened, but at least they're trying to address them.
I appreciate the sentiment. I think from Dave, obviously there's no real there's no more granular information about if there's going to be another wave of Origins and how that's sort of going to go out, or the time frame specifically on that. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking at it and saying, okay, I'm glad, but sort of when is this planned for? And obviously this seems like a statement of intent more than it seems like an announcement of specifics. So I think that's great.
Yeah, that's
to hear that they're listening. It probably doesn't help a lot of the locals, or a lot of people in the situation they're in right now. I would say like about 60 to 70. No, I'd say 80% of my locals that I've talked to have cited having issues getting cards that they want.
Yep.
So it is extremely widespread of an issue.
Yeah, I'm having problems too. Like I got lucky that the amount that I opened, I was able to open a case of my own, and I got I have a Kaisa deck ready to go, and I just got really lucky with those pulls. But I'm trying to play a bunch of different decks, and I'm missing cards, and it's like, you know what? I just can't even get those cards, and I'll just have to play with some replacements in a lot of these decks right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good. I think I have been, and it's easier for me because I'm biased because of the show. But I have been viewing Origins as like, this is beta release. There's going to be bugs. I've accepted those bugs. It's obviously not as easy for everyone else because like not getting product really sucks, and having, all the other things that they listed that they said that they're remedying, that does actually suck. And I'm making a bit too light of it, making light of it a bit too much rather. To me, it's like, I would rather have this than have the game be 2 years away, or something like that. Whatever. Maybe that's extreme, but like, I am happy that it's GTA here. Yeah, exactly. I don't want that because like the hype for the game. I mean, maybe in 2 years we would have been saying, "Oh, so glad that they waited and everything is perfect and this is the greatest thing ever." I doubt it because people will complain about stuff no matter what. So,
how many more Rift Lab Trials tournaments can I satisfy myself with in the meantime?
Yeah, anything that keeps us from having to use Tabletop Simulator is a good thing in my mind. So overall, like, yeah, it's fine. I think the rare redemption thing is a little interesting,
dude.
I get it.
A small number. I think I had like 1 in 4. I
want to
say
it
seems like a lot.
Of the packs in my cases had a single rare in them. Like, no shade, but like, I didn't keep the packs either, bro. I'm not taking pictures of barcodes and sending that, but no one's doing that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
No one's doing that.
That actually is crazy. I had in one box was 2, and I was keeping pretty. I was keeping track of it pretty strenuously. Now, obviously, like I may have just gotten lucky.
No, I'm with Mitch. It happened a lot. It happened a lot.
On a foil stack deck, I'll take a foil stack deck over any rare, pretty much. So unless it's Watcher, like like unless it's literal Watcher, I will take even a non-foil stack deck. I will take over any rare. So I think like I get the sentiment, like give people the rares, but like this is a like perception, not reality thing where it's like, yeah, those uncommons are probably better than most of the rares people are getting anyway. I get that, like that's not the point. And
no, it's the Watcher slot, Blev. It would have been a Watcher.
You just get
I was short on these guys after a case.
Yeah.
I only got one in the case.
No, I know. I'm making light of it. And yeah, it does stink. And like it would have been easy if they just didn't say the always have 2 rares or whatever. Like if they just said like, sometimes you get 3 rares, sometimes you get 1, and it averages out to 2.
I wouldn't have been fine,
but
I would not have battled an eyelid. For the listeners, I was holding up a Darius Trifarian, by the way. I only got one of those in my case, and I was like, I don't know if that was related to this issue, but I definitely noticed like Cass that I had a number, like quite a noticeable number of packs. I would say like more than the limit. I think it was like limit 3 per person.
Yeah, limit 3, 6 per household or whatever. But like,
I did get a case right, so that obviously I was very privileged to open a large number of packs. But yeah, I didn't. I definitely saw a reasonably high number of this.
Yeah,
occurring.
Same here. Like I'm not complaining about what I can play, but it's like I definitely see this issue as like being. It was pretty widespread, and the last kind of note I have on it is they did say that it may be impacted for Spirit Forge, but shouldn't be impacted for set 3. So it seems like that's rough. That's rough that's just going to happen for the next set. And there's really, understandably not much they can do about it if they've already been printing all this product, right? But that's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to say. Let's do the mailbag.
Okay, let's move on. We'd be remiss if we did not get to our very favorite segment of the show. It is the mailbag. Starting here, Kevin Reimer 293 says, first off, enjoying the content immensely. I gotta say, if you compliment us in the beginning, it's a good. That's a good.
Yep.
I just pick it. I don't even read the rest of it. Says, are you attending the Houston Regional? Do you all have your decks ready? If not, are you willing to pay the currently inflated prices for the necessary cards, or are you just making substitutions? Thank you.
Great question.
Cass, I know you kind of just talked about this. There's not really necessarily a choice in a lot of cases.
I was really lucky. Like Mitch was saying, like we each got to open a case, right? Like that's super lucky. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to basically get my whole Kai'Sa deck. If I want to play 2 time warps, I have to find a second time warp. But I got 1, which might be all that I need. So yeah, I just like I can build pretty much whatever Kai'Sa deck I want with what I pulled, and so I may just play Kai'Sa for Houston if I play instead of playing something else. I was thinking about playing for a Metal Legend, but considering that I just have Kai'Sa at full power and nothing else at like full power except Teemo, I've got Teemo at full power. Then I would just play Kai'Sa. If I was not gonna play Kai'Sa, I would not really buy too many cards at inflated prices. I would try and find a deck list that is full power at a more budget option. Is how I would approach it personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going. I sort of said I will go to Houston if I get asked to cast it. But outside of that, it's a little bit of a big lift with childcare and stuff like that. But if it ends up becoming work related, then hey, we can make it happen. My deck's ready. I think I come from Flesh and Blood, so I would have. I know I'm the kind of player that needs a bit of help, so I would probably make sure I had all the cards that I needed to be as competitive as possible, and I would have paid for them because I play Flesh and Blood, and that's just something I'm used to at this point.
That is what it is.
But I'm telling you, I was lucky. I got my time warp at $30 before stuff went absolutely ape shit, because I don't think I could swallow the current price for that card. I think that is absurd. But yes, if I were going, it would be Kai'Sa, and I'd spend another $150 or plus to get what I needed. Bro!
Yeah. Crazy, right?
I'm on the wait list. So if I get a notification ahead of time, and maybe even if I have to show up and maybe get on the wait list, I plan to be there. And I would likely be playing Kai'Sa for the same reasons, in that I opened everything I need to play Kai'Sa minus. I only have 1 time warp. I would not pay what the time warps are going for now. I don't think a second one is enough to justify the absolutely overinflated price for that card right now. So I would just substitute one of those out. If, however, I had everything available, I would be playing an Arby deck instead. But the version that I play, I'm missing a lot of stuff for. Kai'Sa is surprisingly budget, which is, I think, why like the Watchers and some of those other cards are more expensive. Just because everybody wants to build that deck, and there's not a lot at like the higher rarities that you need. It's like Time Warps, the Champion,
Rain,
and then everything else. Yeah, Rain, right? So it's like, and then everything else is rares. So like Watcher, Darius, etc., being a bit more expensive makes sense to me, because the rest of the deck is pretty plentiful. But that's what I would play mostly, because I don't want to spend overinflated prices on Time Warp.
Yeah. I am not going to Houston, at least not to play, and currently not planning on going. But if I were in a situation and I wanted to play at a high level event like that, I'm old school Magic player. Like, you just got to do what you got to do. I played just for Thunder Maw Hellkites for enough years to be okay with like spending $50 on Mythic Dragon from core set of year, and regretting it because they $2 afterwards. It's just a competitive game like that, it's just what you got to do.
We're an audience for like we've played Fab and Magic, so this game is still pretty affordable comparatively. Even though these it's sad but true. Even though these prices are crazy, I mean, I just was fortunate enough in Fab to pay for my decks with like tournament winnings, which is very lucky. But like, so I would hope to do the same in Riftbound. Ideally, is just like try and win tournaments or like wherever I can and fund my decks that way. But do our best.
Doing our best, and our best was this, because that would be it. Everyone, again, huge shout out, Mitch. Thank you for coming on. Mitch, any last minute sellout shout outs you want to say before we kick it off here?
Oh, look, thanks for having me on, guys. I hopefully can do this again. I have a lot of fun chatting shop with you guys in general. It's kind of nice getting on a podcast with also some casters, and we all sort of passionate about this, which is great. You can find me on X or Twitter at Ubershouts. If you're a card game fan, want to see maybe some of me practice what I preach, I will be commentating the Flesh and Blood World Championship this week. And so that would be the weekend of the 15th of November. Check that out. You can also find me on the Valorant Champions Tour, the Overwatch Champions Series. You can find me on Brawl Stars. You can find me casting Deadlock every week on Night Shift Deadlock. It's obviously an upcoming game, but I've been casting a bunch of that. And hopefully on some Riftbound stuff in the near future. Maybe we can get a collab going with the boys on in here. But yeah, guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. And anytime, Mitch, the door is always open. But we are closing on this episode. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But that is going to be it for this episode of The Winning Point. For Casanova, for Charmer, for our wonderful guest, Uber, for everyone else on the Turn 'em Sideways production staff. Thank you all. We'll see you.